vulnerability unleashes leadership.
Hey out there, this is Heather Vickery, and you've tuned in to the Brave Files podcast. Welcome. Thrilled to have you here with us. We've all had our brushes with toxic masculinity. It's easy to see how toxic masculinity is dangerous for women, but honestly, there's a serious danger for men and all people, regardless of gender, when it comes to something toxic like this. And changing it takes a lot of unwiring, unraveling, and retraining all people across the board on what it means to be, quote, a man. Well, my guest this week is Charles Matheus, and he has been taking on toxic masculinity in a really, really big way. But Charles doesn't call it that. He calls it, quote, the man box. And he uses that term because of all of the negativity that's associated with toxic masculinity. Charles says that sometimes we have to find a clever way into a conversation, and using polarizing words, even if they are accurate, won't always help us break through to the group of people who most need to hear what we have to say. Charles freely admits that despite all of his personal work and growth, he sometimes still finds himself inside that man box. He tries his best to recognize his behavior, take responsibility for it, and do better. Charles and I have this incredible conversation. It's really beautiful and fantastic and honest and raw. We tackle weakness and failure. And what the hell is a soft skill? Why does such an important thing have such a pathetic name? We talk about using our privilege responsibly and to support others, and what it means to be a true leader. There's so much to this conversation. Let's get to it. Here we go. This is Heather Vickery, and you're listening to The Brave Files, stories from people living courageously. When we choose bravely in big and small ways, it powerfully elevates our lives. I hope these stories connect with you and encourage you to embrace bravery in every possible way, day after day. Together, we can build a movement of courageous living that enriches both our lives and our communities. And if you enjoy the show, I ask you to please share it with others. Maybe think of someone who you want to choose bravely right alongside you. Thanks for tuning in. Now here's the show. Folks, you are going to be so glad that you joined us today, because today we're learning about, wait for it, I'm channeling my best inner Barney Stinson there. Wait for it. I couldn't help it. The recovery journey of going from the quote unquote man box of masculinity and into a healthier lifestyle that's more full, more authentic, and less dependent on domination and repression. For today's guest, Charles Matheus, he grew up like most other young men, embedded in the idea that power and happiness come from conforming to expectations, a particular level of confidence, certainty at all costs, and emotional stoicism. Charles found a way off, thank goodness, of that ladder to nowhere. And since then, Charles is such a neat guy. We met on Twitter. I think that's so cool. I love the socials. He now mentors boys and coaches men to see how their power actually grows through vulnerability and connection instead of toxic masculinity. And although I know a lot of people men who have been on this journey, I don't know very many who are as verbose about it as you are, Charles, and who are as willing to vulnerably bring other people along on this journey and very specifically talk about why it matters. So Charles, welcome to the Brave Files.
Heather, thank you so much. I would really love you to write the foreword to my book. That was, you described that so beautifully. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I've always wanted somebody to ask me to write the foreword to their book. So maybe we could work that out.
Here we go.
Well, you know what? Let's just go there. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about your things, but you do have a book coming out. Why don't you tell folks what it is?
Yeah, so the working title right now is Leadership and Masculinity, How Men Can Embrace New Strength and Unleash Their Leadership. And it's really just about what you talked about in the intro. And it is, centered around my experience, I try and be really clear that what we call man box masculinity is as much something that's done to men as men do. I stay away from the term toxic leadership and really focus on the idea that, society, culture has created these norms for how men are supposed to behave. And that's sort of worked to maintain some dominance and white supremacy and misogyny. It's sort of kept men on top, and that's been great. But it doesn't work in the 21st century. It's just that.
It's only been great for the white straight men.
Yes, it's only been
great.
working. And but yes, exactly. Why working? It's been. I thought I made that clear, but no, you're absolutely right. It's worked to maintain that hierarchy.
You
that
did
word that's so hard to pronounce. Yeah.
Hierarchy.
Yeah.
I know I have hierarchical. I still can't say it. I can say hierarchy, but there you go.
I don't even know how many syllables are in hierarchical. I don't know if it's 8 or 13. But the point is, like that hierarchical set of relationships actually diminishes us. It diminished me. Trying to always be try to be better than my wife, better than a younger person, better than an LGBTQI person, better than somebody who makes less money than me. That just kept me separate and isolated.
Is better than, when you say that like that, is that word synonymous with stronger?
In many ways, because that's been the definition of strength, right? There's always contests in the old man box masculinity or the old dominance culture. Strength is always defined by whether or not you've won the most recent contest of having more money, of being physically stronger, of being quicker with a put down, of being able to trick women into relationship or sex or whatever it is. So yeah, it's always a contest. And those contests define, a kind of strength that is never assured. It's never grounded because it's always based on the most recent contest. So men are always, when we are caught up in that man box thinking and that dominance thinking, we're never relaxed. We're never at ease. We never have a relationship that's really sustaining, because even our relationships, oh, you suck. Just kidding. I love you, bro. Right. Like that's the kind of banter that men maintain in order to stay in that competitive mindset. But all you have to do is step away from that, and then you can have different kinds of relationships.
Right. Well, because all of those behaviors have, whether intended or unintended, consequences. And so, you said you try to stay away from the word toxic, which I absolutely respect, because it's a trigger word that's automatically going to shut people down and they're not going to listen. But toxic behaviors are there all the time. There's toxic positivity, there's toxic masculinity, there's toxic feminism, and all of it is taking whatever it is that you're doing so far that it is incredibly unhealthy.
Right.
And has all of these, again, intended and unintended consequences for everyone around us. Now, as you so vulnerably and eloquently said, these behaviors for men in general, because certainly the man box, as you call it, toxic masculinity, is not reserved specifically and only for white straight men. Those are the ones that have stayed most in power from that, but it is across the board. And y'all listen, for all of my male listeners, I don't hate men. I like men. Most of my good friends are men. So this is really just a really healthy conversation to dig in, but it has kept people in power, and it doesn't serve anymore. It's also really unfair. My mom was like, life's unfair. Like, you can't use the word fair, but we should be able to use the word.
It's unjust. It's unjust. It's unjust, and it prevents equity. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So let's go back to little Charles.
Yeah.
At what point in your life, was there a point in your life where you were strong in the man box and you went, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, how do you get from being a little boy who was 100% raised in this environment, as most little boys are? I know lots of folks right now, especially people in the queer community, who are really cognizant of trying to raise their children without these gender boxes,
Right.
but it's still super prevalent. So take us back to little Charles and how did we get here?
Right. I grew up with a strong, smart mom and an emotionally available father. So I come from kind of a non-traditional set of gender roles in that way. But my father still struggled with his own adaptations to the man box, and the a lot of depth psychologists talk about, kind of the primary wounding that gives us this message that we're less than and not good enough and that we spend the rest of our lives kind of dealing with. And what I got was just a look of disdain from my dad when I tangled my fishing line for the 30th time, in the willows next to the Verde River as he's trying to teach me to fish. So,
Mm,
and I know that he got that exact same look and that exact same attitude from his father. We've just been passing it down for generations unintentionally.
yeah.
But the 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 man box and those cultural expectations are so encoded in our culture, so encoded in how we behave on the playground, so encoded in how teachers treat us differently based on whatever gender we appear to be, that it's really kind of the water that most men swim in. And then we want to interview these men slash fish, and they say, "What are you talking about? This is just what I'm swimming in." So
Yeah.
there's not one thing that shoves a boy into the man box. It's this repeated policing from other men. And like I was talking about, it's like guys being like, "Yeah, I love you, brother. You suck." That's that constant little, policing, these constant little put downs that tell us what's the right way to behave. Oh, don't be a girl. Oh, don't be soft, or don't be weak. All of these messages, they're very clear, and they crop up. They still crop up, and they crop up even between me and really quote unquote evolved men. We catch ourselves like, "Oh, dude, sorry." Like I was having this great conversation with my editor the other day, and I was just I made a crack about him being kind of scattered. And he's not scattered. He's just like, he thinks his thinking is so broad and he's got so much energy. And I was jealous. And so I tried to take him down a
Ooh,
notch.
what a
And I
realization.
had to stop him. He kept going. It didn't bother. He's so confident. It didn't bother him. But I had to apologize because I just felt awful for like participating in that takedown culture. And I was fortunate enough in my growth and leadership to start leading in the outdoors, which
Mm,
was one of the more diverse leadership industries to be in. Not as many women as there should be, but more women than in other places. Lots of collaborative leadership, lots of attention paid to relationship and listening, lots of attention paid to the whole person, the thinking domain, the feeling domain, the somatic domain. So I learned how to be a leader from that non-compartmentalized, quote unquote, soft skills arena.
soft skills are the strongest skills.
They are, which is, yeah, nobody can see this, but I put soft skills in quotes.
I know
People
he did.
skills, relational skills.
Yeah.
Mark Green, my podcast partner, calls them relational skills. And those are the set of skills that most men get
Oh,
talked out of.
okay. Hold on a second. I need to go there with you. I love
Yeah.
that your podcast partner says that because I have to imagine, I don't know the origin of the term quote unquote soft skills, but it was probably a dude who came up with that. And
100%.
relational skills is a fucking fantastic word choice
Yeah.
because that's exactly what it is. And
They are
so
badass skills. They are
they are
badass.
they are badass. I now ask all of you who are listening, and Charles, you are now invited to police me if you ever, for any reason, in any scenario, hear me use the word soft skills. Correct me to relational skills. I am going to write it on a post-it note and put it out because I want to be part of the movement that erases that term of soft skill.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So, my story is I relearned my relational skills. I was in an environment that supported my use of relational skills. And then I got involved with mentoring boys and helping teen boys reconnect to their emotional selves to be able to identify a feeling besides the word fine. Like that's not a feeling.
Mm. No,
Hungry
it's
is
not.
hungry, tired. Those are not feeling words. And having as men, we had to walk our talk as we were working with these teenage boys to help them express those feelings so that they could connect, so that they could learn some emotional self-regulation. Talk about a relational skill just with ourselves, right? How
Yeah.
do we feel our emotions without letting them overtake us or cause us to act out? So I was in this wonderful environment of relational skills and a focus on positive supportive relationships.
And so when are you conscious? Like at what point in your life are you like, "Whoa, hold up. Like this is I don't want this box.
Yeah.
I don't want to." Are you a parent, Charles?
No.
No. Okay. Uh
Talk about a set of difficult skills. Oh my God.
Yeah, right now I feel underqualified to be the parent of my 4 children, but whatever. Life knocks you down. You get knocked down, you get back up again. Somebody should make a song like that.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah, go ahead.
that's you don't want to see other men in it, and we of course have to start with our children. And to be fair, we don't want to just start with our male gender identified children, just like teaching young girls that they have the right to say no, that what they wear doesn't mean they're asking for it, that walking alone at night doesn't mean they deserve it. Like we have to teach our girls that. We have to teach our boys that. And
Absolutely.
so to not raise young men to be in the man box, to be toxic, to do all of that, we also
Yep.
have to raise all gendered people to not put that on them.
Right. There
To
are,
grow a
yeah,
pair. Hey
yeah.
man, grow a pair.
Right, right. Yeah, women and girls do participate in policing men back into the man box, men and boys back into the man box. That absolutely happens. There was a great one. We interviewed Ashante Branch, who runs programs in middle schools in Oakland, and he gets boys in groups, and they work on emotional expression and work on solid brotherhood. And sometimes those boys have to ignore him in the halls later, because in the hallway is a different place than in that circle where they just expressed their
Ooh.
vulnerability and their fears and their dreams and all that. So it's not always safe everywhere. And
It's interesting that you say that because I actually feel like as the mentor, it's really important to recognize that they cannot do that work in that circle if you don't allow them to pretend they didn't do that work in the hallway.
yeah,
It's sad,
yeah,
and I hope that it
yeah, I'm
shifts, but we
feeling
do
feeling
have
some
to
sadness.
understand
Yeah.
that there are consequences. Like we have to be, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm lesbian, and I often come out on stage, except I need to sometimes go, wait, am I in Waterloo, Iowa? This is maybe not
Yeah.
where I want to declare this from the stage because I
Yeah.
don't have security with me, right?
Right.
I'm not,
Right.
I don't have my own personal bodyguard, and I don't know what's going to happen to me when I leave here and walk back alone to my hotel room.
Yeah. 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 And I'm a huge proponent of vulnerability. Vulnerability was one of my words, and I recognize the tremendous privilege I carry by being a white, straight seeming cis man. It's actually, there's a lot more. I carry a lot more safety around with me to be vulnerable. Um,
Yeah.
but despite the fact that the man box is screaming at me, don't be vulnerable, that's being weak.
Yeah.
You're going to be lumped in with women, and then you won't be safe. And that's one of the myths that come with the man box that prevent men from stepping out of it, is this idea that they will then feel as unsafe as you do sometimes, that they will
Mm,
be giving up this sort of perch of teetery, fragile, but real security. And what I'm telling men is that, we can kind of maintain our privilege and use it responsibly to be
yes.
vulnerable and to create more places that are safer for more people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the true definition of being an ally in any scenario is using our privilege to create positive change, to lift up other voices, to create safer spaces. right?
Yeah.
And you're very good at that across the board. That was how we ended up becoming Twitter friends, was because I was like, well, I really like what this guy is saying about Black lives, about women's rights, about, all of these things. At what point do you decide, I am going to go all the way out there? I am going to be really loud. Now,
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation in a group coaching session earlier today that I'm a catch more bees with honey kind of person. I do think that positivity matters and that, I want to pull people in. But the fact of the matter is, we all know that sometimes we got to be loud and sometimes we've
Yeah.
got to take off the gloves. And sometimes negative causes better behavior than positive reinforcement. Now, I think that sucks. I'm going to be really clear and say that I'm not a fan of that being a truth. But as human beings, we don't want to be in pain.
Right.
We want to be comfortable. And this is painful work. And so at what point did you decide, fuck it, I am going to go out there and I'm going to call people on their bullshit and I'm going to say this thing and I'm going to do this. And there are probably going to be lots of people who don't like me for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's when I realized that every time I expressed vulnerability, I felt more powerful.
Fucking A.
And I want that for men. I want that version of power for men and boys. And like I said, I came from, a father who was, reasonably emotionally available. I had all these wonderful experiences with outdoor leadership. I got involved with men's retreats and boys retreats and in environments where vulnerability was appreciated and expected. And then I got promoted to full on executive director of the local Boys to Men chapter. And I forgot every damn thing I learned about how to lead collaboratively, how to listen, how to breathe, how to be vulnerable. So this was the kind of the beginning of like, okay, well, I really got to get out there and be loud about this because I failed. I effed up. We swear on this podcast, right?
Yes, we swear.
I fucked up. I fucked up, Heather, like everything I'd learned because I was so anxious about not being good enough for this role. The Peter principle and imposter syndrome and all that stuff came up for me. Women talk about the imposter syndrome all the time, but it is right there for men. And so many men in men's retreats will raise their hand when somebody else says, you know what, sometimes I don't feel good enough. Hands go up all around the circle. And I didn't know that. I thought I was unique. I thought I was special. I thought I was really special and how bad I was. Because exactly. And that's one of the things that men do when we feel that lack of competence, we overcompensate.
Yeah.
Most women tend to get smaller. A lot of men get bigger. So I started micromanaging my employees. I started literally telling them how to cross their I's and dot their T's on the reports. And I fractured my relationships. All of these wonderful relationships I'd had with the volunteers were strained. And my board finally had to pull me aside to a special meeting. And I realized, oh my God, I'm in danger of losing my dream job because I tried to control everything out of my fear. I stopped being vulnerable. I was hiding. I was trying to cover up all of my mistakes. Unfortunately, I got some transformational coaching that started with reconnecting me to my ability to be vulnerable. And then I had to go back. Once I did that work, I had to go back to those men, to those volunteers, to those people I was supervising and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's like the hardest thing for a lot of people, but especially men to say ever.
Absolutely.
And not, I'm sorry if.
Right. I'm
but
sorry if I offended
sorry.
you. No, I'm sorry. I hurt you. I treated you poorly. I managed you badly. I need your help to be a better leader. And that last part of I need your help was what unleashed this creativity and collaboration in that team. But it also, like I said, it unleashed in me this desire to spread this experience as much as possible, to really explain this cognitive dissonance between what the man box is telling us and what the truth is. The
Yeah.
truth is that when we can be vulnerable and when we can admit mistakes, sometimes we have to do it with a therapist or a trusted group first, which is what I did before just like laying it out in front of the people who I hurt. But when we can do that, we don't get ostracized from the tribe,
Yeah.
right? The tribe, in my case at least, the tribe said, yes, Les, right, we got you. We got your back. Let's do this.
And it's okay. We can do it again. So that for
Yep.
me, as the creator of the Brave method, to me, that falls very firmly in what I call the 3 R's, which is reassessment, reframing, and resilience. Like
Hmm.
this didn't work. This didn't feel good. I don't want this. I don't want this for other people. What did I learn? Right. So we've reassessed. What did I learn? What do I want to do differently? How am I going to behave? And then resilience. Okay. Now we get up and we do it again. But
Absolutely.
what was so fascinating to me about what you said there was this trigger that's tripped when we all of a sudden become the boss or the leader,
Yeah.
where we think that we have to behave. And this is not a uniquely male perspective. I think it's for a lot, across the board. We have to behave a certain way in order to live up to the standards and expectations. And that's one of the reasons, the executive coaching that I do, I call it the whole employee, like a 360 approach, and learn to lead from wherever you are, because we put people in a leadership role without ever having given them any training on what it actually means to be a leader.
Yeah.
Because a leader isn't somebody who tells you what to do and micromanages all the things you just said.
Right.
A leader is collaborative and brings in shared vision and helps you do your best job on the team and understand how everybody else's role plays into it. And I'm so grateful that you're out working with these young men and these boys on how to do that more thoughtfully and
Yep.
vulnerably and authentically, because it does change. I always tell people we can't change anyone but ourselves, but when we change ourselves, the people around us change.
Yeah. Ah,
And you
yeah.
saw
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
When you
Right.
came back and apologized, what was different then the next time?
Well, I mean, just to put it into business terms, like we tripled the amount of impact we had in the community.
Yeah.
We doubled our fundraising. We were able to create brand new programs that served a completely different age group. Our reputation in the community went through the roof. We had no problems recruiting. In fact, we had to turn volunteers away. So, and from a less measurable perspective, it was just so much more fun. It
Yes.
was creative and
We should be measuring
collaborative.
fun.
Oh my God, so much energy, and then to just measure my own change, like I started sleeping again.
Wow.
I was able to breathe fully again. I wasn't anxious all the time. I wasn't trying to hide the amount of energy it takes to hide, failure and isolation it just took a lot out of me. I'm really lucky. I mean, I'm lucky that I didn't have some sort of bad health outcome. I'm really glad that my board caught it when they did, so that I didn't, ruin myself and ruin the organization any further. And that's why, you talk about me working with men and boys, and I'm actually not working with teens so much anymore, because I want to be upstream working with men who are in leadership positions, who can, as you say,
Mm.
change the environment,
Yes.
make it possible for more people, all kinds of people, previously marginalized folks, to be included in this kind of collaborative, welcoming, fun, vulnerable, brave leadership.
Oh, I love that. And we find societally, when you think about minority groups of any kind, you think about the bullies in those groups, it is a protective measure. It
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
they're beating up on me in all these other places, and I'm going to have some power here. And it doesn't work. It leads to really bad things across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
So I love that you're out here doing that. You said less measurably, everyone was happier.
Yeah.
And I think you and I should collaborate and come up with some sort of metric to measure happiness and joy, because
Yeah.
I believe deeply from my firsthand experience with myself and with all of my clients, that you're 100% right. That when we are happier, when we live more joy-filled lives, we have the cup runneth over, right? We have more
Right.
to give. We create more happiness and joy. We think more collaboratively and community oriented. And what do we want? And that leads me into a question that I get to ask on this show every week that I love, but I'm supremely excited to ask you right now, which is, how do you celebrate success? Because these things are they're all the same. And the more we
Yeah.
celebrate, the more we have to celebrate.
Yeah. Heather, this is a great question because I'm still learning how to do that. And
Mm,
one of the robberies of the man box is to prevent men from celebrating success, in part because there's never, if you're in the man box, if you're on that dog eat dog world, that hierarchical ladder, there never is an actual success because there's always somebody stepping on your head up above you.
yeah.
There's always
You
somebody
can't
clawing
be
at
good
your
enough.
ankles. You can't be good enough. You can't put down your guard. So I have to train myself to even express joy and celebration with my body because I noticed, I guess it was 2 months ago, something I had completed my first really long webinar about this topic, and I'd poured so much work into it. And you know how it is with webinars. You hang up the Zoom and there you are in your studio or your living room or whatever, and you're just nobody's passing around champagne and
Yeah.
canapes, right? You're just done. And I realized that by the time my wife came home from work later, that I felt like anxious and tied up as if there
And
was
maybe
something wrong.
disappointed.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, just like there was just energy that wasn't flowing.
Mm,
And she reminded me, Charles, celebrate what just happened today. And I like put on some music and like
yeah.
danced and kind of waved my arms to release that celebration,
Yeah.
to release that energy because it just gets stuck and it's not accepted. It's not, part of the man box to dance around and with a hairbrush and sing, right? Which is what we all need to do. I was just realizing that joy and accomplishment are just as likely to get stuck in my body as trauma and fear. And I don't want it
Absolutely.
stuck, even though I love joy and accomplishment. It's not good for it to be stuck. It needs to flow. All emotions need to flow. Anger, sadness, grief, it all needs to move and not be just lodged in some organ.
Yeah, it does. It does need to move. And I want to just say to you and to everyone listening, if celebration doesn't come naturally to you, there is no shame in planning it. So if you know that you're going to lead a big webinar and that you're going to be in your living room when you're done and that it's not any good, fucking have a plan. Tell your partner, your friend, your spouse, I want to pop some bottles with you later, or sometimes I close webinars like with it's always for me, it's Raise Your Glass by Pink. And sometimes I have it ready to play and I'll play it on the way out and we'll dance our way out. Or have chocolate, or I want to have a nice meal, or man, I'm going to take a bath when this is over, or whatever the fuck you want it
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
You can plan it. There's no shame in that. That's how we build and create habits. And it can be a boundary. Like we can set a boundary for ourselves that it's non-negotiable that we'll celebrate.
Love it. A boundary with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got a book coming out. When is your book due to come out?
It is on schedule.
You're still
It will be.
editing, so
I'm still
you got
editing,
a
but
minute.
yeah, it's if all goes well, end of March. End of March. I'm hoping for as early as the equinox because I love doing things on the quarter days. But by the
Woo,
end of
you're
March,
moving
yeah,
fast, mister.
yeah, yeah,
It's March in like a minute.
yeah. Look at that. Yep, a month from now. A month
It'll
from
be
now.
March when this episode
Yeah,
airs.
yeah,
Okay. Well, so then I need you to promise me that you will plan some sort of celebration around your book being
yes,
completed. And I want to
yes,
hear all about it. I'll tell you, my partner and I both had books that came out. Hers came out late September in 2021. Mine came out in late October.
yeah,
And she was very honest with me about her book release day, which was supposed to be such a wonderful, exciting day, was a really sad day for
mm,
her because people did not meet her imaginary expectations that she hadn't asked for. And, people can't give us what we want if they don't know what it is. So she didn't get
yeah,
inundated with
yeah,
calls and text messages and things like that
yeah,
because people are busy and no one,
yeah,
they loved her. They loved her book. She was on the best-selling list for a month. It's an amazing book. but she just felt let down by that experience. And so going
Yep.
into mine, I knew I didn't want that. So I planned all day long to do live streams with people and be, we were on Instagram, we were on Facebook, we did all these things. And then I planned myself a party. I
Love
was
it.
like, no one has walked up in here and offered to throw me a book launch party. I will throw my own party. And it was fucking incredible. And, you know, when we talk about breaking any toxic habits, whether we're talking about the man box or any of the rest of them,
Yep.
just simply choosing to not anchor all of our joy and happiness on other people's behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving ourselves the things that we most need, we break
Absolutely.
those chains so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I will do that. I will invite you to the party. We'll have an online party. We'll have a real life party here in Prescott, Arizona. But also, what came up for me a little bit was I'm beginning to understand the concept of vulnerability to be much broader than most people imagine it. Vulnerability
Yes.
is not just about like, I feel bad and I'm going to tell you so that you will support me. It's like, I am curious about what I'm thinking. I'm open to my own
Yes.
thoughts. I'm going to be brave and ask for what I want. I'm going to share with you when I'm really happy, not just when I'm sad
Yes.
or need something. I am going to risk telling you what I need and what kind of support I would like from you. I'm going to be vulnerable to you and for you. Heather, tell me what you're feeling right now. I want to hear about your experience being a podcast host, or your experience being a parent, your experience being a lesbian woman. I want to be vulnerable to your experience so that my circle of understanding and compassion can get broader and broader and broader out there. So vulnerability is there's a lot more
Mm.
to it than just, "Blah, I'm going to complain and I want you to hear me."
So much. So much. Yes. Circle of compassion and understanding. We're pretty sure that's what I'm going to name this episode.
Oh,
if that
fantastic.
if that's
Yeah.
okay with you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it is about man box and it is about masculinity, and we'll put that in all the descriptions and all the show notes, but it is really about expanding our circle of compassion and understanding
Yep.
for ourselves, for the people around us.
Yep.
That's how we grow. It's how we build community. It's something that is a real strength for you. And I have to give you one of the questions that I had down to ask you. And I didn't have to ask it because you were so forthcoming. The question was, when do you find yourself falling into these old patterns of behavior,
Yeah.
and what do you do about it? And you
Yeah.
were very quick to share that. Your first few minutes of the conversation,
Yeah.
you talked about your editor.
Yeah.
Is there a way you feel it? Like, how do you get that sense of awareness? Do you have a feeling in your body somewhere, or what shows up for you?
Yeah. I start feeling scared that there's not enough. And
Scarcity.
yeah, scarcity. And that's one of it's one of the components of the man box, is this win-lose zero sum understanding of how the world works. So, I remember sitting at a conference, at a Boys to Men conference, with all these incredibly brilliant, soulful, heartfelt men, including people like Ashanti Branch. And they were speaking and they were answering questions, and people were asking them questions, and people were engaging with them. And there were these beautiful ideas. And I'm like, man, how come nobody's giving me attention? And like, I just had to laugh at myself. Like, and just the day before, I'd been, leading a group that everybody was gathered around me, and more people kept coming in and more people kept joining the group. But that had been 24 hours earlier. And all of a sudden my cup is empty again. But just when it can happen when I see other people getting a lot of attention and validation, other men in particular getting a lot of attention and validation, other men being powerful, having something that I believe that I lack. And that's what happened in my conversation with
Yeah.
my editor. And like I said, I just kind of have to laugh. I don't expect this to ever go away. I don't expect ever to evolve past this, but I just
It's like
being
a
able to
constant recovery state.
constant recovery state. And I caught myself within 30 seconds of my crack at my editor. So I think that's pretty good.
Pretty good. And So that sense of catching yourself, that sense of awareness, which we may feel physically in our body, or we notice that we have these almost trauma responses to things and we're cognizant of it. But then, and I have to, I want to use a term that's so steeped in patriarchal toxic masculinity. The term I want to use is the real measure of a man, like
Yeah.
a real man,
Right.
but a real person, a real, honest, vulnerable, authentic, valued person says, fucking A, man, I just did this and I made fun of you for that. And that was because I was feeling less than. I was feeling threatened by
Yep.
you, which is stupid because we're on the same side here. To say that out loud and acknowledge it, even if the person on the other end maybe didn't catch it or they were going to let it go or they didn't know, like this is how we lead from where we stand.
Right. How we lead from where we stand. Love it. And I think, again, my experience, so the man box tells me all this stuff. Well, if you admit that you made mistakes, if you admit that you hurt somebody, if you admit any failure at all, you're going to lose respect and people are going to stop following you. That's the fear. That's one of the myths. And again, what I experience is when I say, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I'm so sorry that didn't come out the way I wanted to. I need to do better. I need help, or I'm going to get help from somewhere else. All I get is more respect and more people who want to follow me and more people who want to engage, like you, just because I'm on Twitter spouting off. So, the journey, as I kind of leave in the very end of the book, the very last chapter of the book, I talk about how all throughout my life, I've done expeditions and I've done mountain climbing and been to the highest peaks in Wyoming and led people down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back. And the metaphor of mountaineering expeditions is that, you start down at base camp and there's a lot of people there and lots of resources. And the higher you climb, the less oxygen there is, the smaller the tents are, the less food there is, the harder it is, the more arduous, the more lonely. And there are some aspects of this journey out of the man box into this kind of whole person attitude. But where the metaphor breaks down is that at each camp along the way in the journey out of the man box toward whole personhood and toward great leadership, great parenting, there are more resources. The camp is more full of people. There's a party going on. Yeah. The oxygen is thicker. The food is better. Until when you're on the summit, yes, there might be a bunch of people left behind who haven't made it up there yet, but it is not a lonely place. It is not a place of sacrifice or risk or lack of resources. It's rich.
That's rich. Beautiful. I love that. If folks want to get to know you better, if there are men listening or people who love men who would like them to listen to Charles, what are the best ways they can find you, your podcast, your website, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So the podcast where we talk about the man box a lot and interview people like Ashanti Branch and Paul Kivel and others is the Remaking Manhood podcast. And we just released our first episode of our second season. And by our, I mean Mark Green and I, where in that episode, we talk very much about what are the benefits of getting out of the man box. So if you search for Remaking Manhood podcast anywhere on your podcast apps, you'll find it. And then I want to engage with your listeners. I'm guessing that a lot of them are women, but I put together a special splash page for listeners to this podcast at charlesmathews.com/brave. And if you go there and give me your email address, I'll send you the new strength framework that talks about the more concrete ways that we can reframe how we think about win-lose versus win-win, power over versus power with, inclusion instead of oppression, all that kind of stuff. So go to charlesmathews.com/brave and we'll get you that information. And please share it as widely as possible.
I love that. Thank you. We'll be sure to promote it as well. But let's do you and our listeners a favor and tell them how to spell Matheus.
For you. Thank you. Yeah. It's Matheus. So one T and a U instead of a W. Matheus.
And it'll be on our show notes, folks. You can find it there. But if you're listening and you're like trying to write this down, I want to make sure you can get to the right place.
Yes.
Before we end our conversation, which you and I could talk for a really long time, but I think this has been such a rich conversation. It feels like a good time to kind of put a pin in it.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what your favorite charitable organization is to support?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's the World Wildlife Fund. They're doing critical work around the planet to protect massive areas of habitat. They focus on, they market the big cuddly pandas and the big important cats, but when we preserve space for those charismatic big animals, we are preserving space for all kinds of biodiversity. And I want to do whatever I can and encourage everybody else to do whatever they can to recognize and come to grips with the fact that we're in the midst of this massive extinction event. And I don't want that to include us. And I also don't want it to include pandas and tigers and jaguars. So yeah, the World Wildlife Federation, I really believe in the worldwide global work that they're doing for non-human critters. Again, expanding my circle of compassion and understanding to include the pangolin, that weird little armored critter in West Africa, right?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. We will give you all sorts of information on the organization in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. Whatever it is that you can give, time, likes, money, shares, whatever that is, I ask you to do that right now. Charles, will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Vulnerability unleashes leadership.
I think I let you cheat and I didn't even know it.
Oh, did I cheat?
Because it's not supposed to be a sentence. It's 3 individual words. It's all right. You got away with something in over 200 episodes.
I did.
Nobody else. So I'm going to challenge you right now.
Yeah.
We're going to treat them like 3 individual words. So come up with why unleashes is one of your words.
I think because the act of unleashing is a fundamental aspect of becoming that full human. The man box is a list of rules and restrictions. And there's a woman box, there's a white box, there's all the kinds of different boxes. And the act of unleashing, especially if we take it really personally and don't attempt to prescribe the exact same version of that act to other people, it can lead to justice. It can lead to freedom for not just, I know this sounds contradictory, my personal unleashing, my very specific, very customized unleashing includes more freedom for you, includes more freedom for children, includes more freedom for pangolins and hummingbirds and jaguars.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks for playing
along. I missed it. No, I was just so excited to talk to you, and I just wrote it down. I was like, oh, unleashes, that's an interesting word. And then when you said it the 3rd time, I was like, that's a sentence. How did that get? I need more coffee today. No, I loved it. Oh, Charles, thank you so much. This is fantastic. We've talked before about collaborating. I look forward to that opportunity. Thank you so much for being here and for doing what you do.
Thank you for what you do. Your podcast is raising people up, I'm sure, all around the country and all around the world. And I think you are giving so many people permission to explore what it means to be brave from so many different angles. And we need courage. We need bravery.
We do.
So much.
We do. Yeah. We really, really do. I love it. And thank you guys for listening. I want to hear what you think. So do me a favor. You can connect with me on Instagram at the Brave Files Podcast and hit me up with a DM. Slide into my DMs. That sounds dirty. And let me know what you think of the show, what you love about this conversation with Charles, and do Charles and I both a favor and share it. Like, listen, review, share it with your friends. Tell people why this is impacting you and how it's helping you get up and do something brave today. I thank you so much for being here, all of you listeners. And Charles, this is Heather Vickery reminding you today and every single day to go out and choose bravely. Bye. Hey friends, I want to share something really exciting with you. We already know you enjoy listening to podcasts because you're listening to this one, but I'm also betting you enjoy audiobooks. And hey, listen, if you don't already enjoy audiobooks, then it's time to check them out. That's why I'm really excited to share Libro.fm with you. They are an incredible new platform for listening to audiobooks. And by choosing Libro.fm over other audiobook services, you are supporting a local bookstore of your choice and investing in your local community. Libro.fm offers over 150,000 audiobooks via their primary platform, which, by the way, they built with love and from scratch because they're a small business also. They even offer bookseller recommendations for great audiobook options. You can sign up right now via www.vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. That's vickeryandco.com/LIBROFM. And when you do, you'll get one free audiobook of your choice, and the proceeds will go to your favorite local bookstore. Now, check what I just said there. You're going to get a free book, and the proceeds are still going to go to your local bookstore because Libro.fm makes sure that their booksellers get paid even when they give a promo to customers. I've listened to over 20 audiobooks this year alone. I especially love listening to memoirs read by the author, and it feels great knowing that all of my purchases support my local bookstore, The Book Table, in Oak Park, Illinois. Libro.fm. The same audiobooks, the same price, but a completely different story. Check them out right now at vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Maybe you've had this thought and then quickly shut it down because who has the time? Or you don't know how, or gosh, it just all seems too hard. If you have something to share with the world, we want to encourage you to get your message out. The world needs to hear it. Did you know that 50% of all homes are podcast fans? If you've ever wondered about having your own podcast or how it can increase your business or get your message across, then please join me and the other experts from the Podcast Power Academy for our monthly free Q&A session. It's called So You Want to Start a Podcast? This casual live conversation will help you understand how podcasting can be a great decision, why now is the best time to get started, and how to get into action with it. Visit podcastpoweracademy.com to learn more. You've been listening to The Brave Files, stories of people living courageously. To learn more about the show, find our show notes and full episode transcripts, or to get some great bonus content, visit thebravefilespodcast.com. And we would love to know what you think of the show. You can give us a call at 312-646-0205. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, the show in general, or maybe share with us how you're out choosing bravely. This episode is brought to you by Vickery & Co. Success Coaching. Coaching that helps you maintain a life well lived and a business well run. Learn more at vickeryandco.com. Our music was created and produced in a custom collaboration with Matt Lewis from ML Creative Consulting, a boutique firm dedicated to helping clients identify their unique sound and amplify their brand with custom delivered soundtracks. We couldn't do any of this without our extraordinary audio engineer, Andrew Olson. Learn more about him and check out his work at findandrewolson.com. And special thanks to everyone on Team Brave, from our producers, associate producers, copy editors, writers, and support team. Special thanks to Molly, Mary, Kim, Sabra, and Sabrina. I'm your host and executive producer, Heather Vickery. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.